Hello, Nancy. Hey, Susan and Christine and Jill. Hey, Keith. Look at the fabulous do going on. Hey, Dean. Hey, Sembe. Pop it in the gallery view and let's see some moves. What do you got? What do you got above the waist moves? Let's
Don't get me started.
Yeah. Feels great. Feels like Baja. Welcome, everyone. Gorgeous, beautiful. Oh, it's so great to see everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Kari Cardinale here. Guess where I am? If you can guess, put it in the chat. Does anybody know where I am right now? Where am I? Where's Kari? I'll tell you. I'm in Baja right now. I am on the MEA campus. I am teaching this week, a wonderful week, reframing retirement. Everyone came here with parkas and hats and gloves and scarves because the United States is freezing into the beautiful sun. And it is so wonderful to have all of you here today. Delighted to have an hour together to chat a little bit about MEA, our experiences at MEA, some of our amazing upcoming guest faculty. I'm super excited for this hour. And so first things first, I want to figure out who is here. So pop into the chat. First, where are you in the world? Let's get what I call my geographical waterfall. We have folks here from all over the world. Freezing Houston. Good to know. Yes, all over the world. Osaka, Japan is 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Someday we'll all go see you where it's nice and warm. Frigid Michigan. There we go. So where are we all in the world? Love it. Okay, great. We've got New Zealand here. North Carolina's here. Wonderful. Wonderful. It's amazing. I find this endlessly exciting that we can all be together in real time from all over the world. And so my question for you is this. If you could choose a word to describe this next stage of your life, what would it be? If you could choose a word to describe the next stage of your life, what would it be? Undecided. Ooh, intentional, grounded, exploration.
Adventure.
Flourishing, exciting, transform, to be determined, TBD. Hedonistic. Joe's going there. No, Joe's confused. Simplicity. That's beautiful, Susan. Expansive, the other Susan. Inspired, exploring. Yes. So MEA, those of you who may be here for the first time, is the world's first midlife wisdom school. There's no other one that we know of. The world's first midlife wisdom school. And guess what? You're in midlife if you're anywhere between age 35 and like 80 now, 75. It's a stage of life that's a marathon, and it's filled with lots and lots of shifts and transitions and changes and opportunities and longings. And this is a place where we bring together those questions, those longings, those desires, those opportunities to realize that we're not alone, to build new friendships, and to explore topics that we might not give ourselves the opportunity to do in our day-to-day life. And to that note, do I have the most wonderful guests to bring on stage here today? We have with us Dené Logan. Hello, Dené.
Hi, everyone.
The beloved teacher. Thank you for being back here today. We're so happy to have you. Dené is going to teach a wonderful, wonderful workshop around relationships, how to transform your relationships. Dené has worked with Esther Perel, who we love. And so we're going to talk about it. We're going to go there today. Really excited to have you here. We also have with us John Pearson, who I've had such a lovely opportunity to connect with in person just last week. John is a current male model and runs an amazingly insane digital lifestyle magazine called Mr. Feelgood. We'll put the link in the chat so you can check it out. And, you're just disarmingly open about all sorts of topics in life. And we're really happy to bring you here to talk about the big ones.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And I'm excited to meet you all and to work with you all.
And of course, I have a special guest with me, Teddi Dean, who's actually at his house, also here down in Baja. Teddi is our mindfulness director at MEA. He has participated in more cohort weeks than anyone else, including our co-founders, and is a really amazing content creator in his own right. So it's great to have you here too, Teddi. Oh, except we can't hear you. Now we're on mute again. It's been a tech day, y'all. Okay, it's been a tech day. Just go with it. We're all good.
Hear me now?
I'm hearing you, Teddi.
All right.
Great. Wonderful. So for the next hour, we are going to have some fun together. We're going to talk about topics about relationships, sex, death, midlife, all kinds of things. No holds barred. But in order to do that, we might need to get a little centered. We may need a minute to get into our bodies, which is what we do at MEA, outside on a platform, on our beautiful ranch. And we invite you to do that regularly as a practice for yourself, whatever that is. So I'm going to turn the stage over to Teddi just for a few minutes to give us a moment to center, get to that experience, and then I'll bring myself and Dené and John back up, and we'll have a lovely chat. Does that sound good, everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
All right, great. So thank you, Teddi. Take it away.
All right, thank you. So honored to be able to just take a moment and sit with you all before we start this wonderful chat about very juicy topics that are very prevalent as we engage in midlife. So just take a moment. You can softly close your eyes if you wish. And just recognize this beautiful body that you're in. This body that has been so good to you throughout your life, allowing you to have a human experience. So just take a moment and feel into the simple fact that you're in this constantly changing, constantly evolving body itself. And use your awareness in a very different way. Start to just let the awareness wash through the body so that we're starting to experience this body on a felt sense level, the feeling tone of being in a body, and not thinking about this body so conceptually, but starting to allow ourselves to move into something that is not so definable. And use your awareness to experience the space within your body, to recognize the fact that this body is really, truly more space than it is matter. And we allow ourselves to experience that space, along with the physicality of this body, the weight of this body, the density of the body itself. And we experience that because we feel the earth beneath us, the earth offering herself to us, the earth always supporting us, the earth providing everything we need to keep ourselves sustained while we're here. And when we recognize that, we can drop into a bit of simplicity. Allowing ourselves to ground and then to find some natural rhythm. So let your tummy relax. Let your shoulders drop. And start to just tune into the gentle ebb and flow of the breath itself. And this body beautifully just knowing exactly what to do at this moment. The in-breath is the in-breath and the out-breath is the out-breath. The compassionate flavor of that in-breath, passing the lips and over the tongue and into this body, and this body expands for a moment. And then the offering of that breath right back out into the world. An offering of oneself into the next moment with our hearts front and center. Preparing ourselves for the rich wisdom to come and the discussions and the ability to just be a human together. We bring our hands to prayer. May all beings find their own natural rhythm. May all beings continue to recognize this foundation of joy to this life. May all beings drop into grace. May all beings be free of suffering. And may we all have a wonderful, beautiful conversation about some wonderful topics and to share in this experience together with our hearts front and center. Namaste and amen.
That was beautiful, Teddi. So you can just imagine sitting on a beach or in a beautiful ranch and having those moments to center, to just help us to calm and reflect and unpack our lives. So I'm going to bring Dené up here to start, and then I'm going to bring Teddi and John back up together. So, yay, Dené, so delighted to have you here, to have you back. And maybe you can just start off and tell us a little bit about you. How have you come to this work, the work that you've done and what you've experienced working with Esther? And I love that you created this really umbrella concept of how do we look at relationships in general to either help us or hinder us in our life, to just look at the teaching capacity of relationships.
Well, thank you, Kari. And I'm so, excited to be here with all of you and talk about my absolute favorite thing to talk about, which is how we relate and love in relationships. And, for whatever reason, I have always been fascinated by connection, how I think the universal truth that sort of connects us all is that we all long for love and connection and to feel really seen and met in love and partnerships. But for a lot of us, I feel like it can be sort of the sticky, tricky thing that we're attempting to unwind and feel like we struggle to find relational fulfillment in our lives. And, it's so funny, something that I think outside of the therapy world, people don't talk about a lot, but therapists talk about it a lot, is people either really love working with couples as a therapist or they won't work with couples as a therapist. And I, for whatever reason, have always loved working with couples. I was like in my practicum and, when people were like, no more couples, I was like, well, give me all the couples. I love them. I think it's fascinating. And I feel like for whatever reason, I was sort of able to, as I was watching two people sit together in a room, translate what I was experiencing happening for each of them in a way that they would hear what I was saying the other person was experiencing in a way that it can be really hard once we're in a partnership with someone for a while to like keep hearing each other and keep being present with one another, right? But there were a lot of things about the ways that I was trained to do couples work that most therapists are trained that there were some gaps for me, some things that just like didn't feel in alignment with what could conceivably bring relational fulfillment and the way that I was taught to think about and hold love in relationships. And as you mentioned, I've been incredibly fortunate to be mentored by Esther Perel, who is someone who, just brings so much curiosity and pioneering energy to what it is to love one another. And, something that was really permission giving in terms of what Esther brings to the table is just this idea of exploring like how we continue to cultivate aliveness. So we're a culture that really, when it comes to relationships, puts a ton of emphasis on attachment and how to create secure attachments, how to create structure, and how to feel like solidified and this relationship is not going anywhere. But we don't put a ton of emphasis on like how to continue to create the eros and the erotic intelligence and the aliveness that all of us, and I would say especially as we age and reach midlife, really start to get into this space of like wanting to be honest with ourselves about like, if this is my one wild and precious life, like how do I want to live, right? Like safety becomes a little bit less of the emphasis and more like, I want to live out loud. I want to live with my whole heart wide open. And so I think what I really focus on with a lot of the couples that I work with is like, how do we hold both? That like we need to feel something is tethering us, some sort of structure in this relationship that I can hold to be true. But how do I really sort of tap into what is, my particular brand of joy and aliveness? And how can I co-create that with someone else in relationship in a way that we both feel really seen and met?
Love this. So let's talk about you mentioned safety. Like safety sometimes can be a trap in long-term relationships, or as we get older, we kind of get a little stuck in a groove, become more risk averse.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have you touch on that, but to tie it into something else that I know you're going to speak about in your week, which is this idea of how do we play with sovereignty at this stage of life, and how do we bring sovereignty into love and relationships, or you describe it as a sovereign love. So maybe you can share this. How do those dynamics work together?
Yeah. So I come from a depth psychology background, with which those of you who aren't familiar with depth psychology, it always sounds like I'm saying death psychology. Now, while we may talk about some themes around death, I'm saying depth psychology. Thank you, Kari. And, a lot of times people describe depth psychology as the psychology of the soul. So really the exploration that we are human beings having we are spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And what that means to bring that into our relating and into our day-to-day lives. Like we can sort of hold it as like an intellectual concept, but like, what does it mean to like really be in the embodied sense of that? And Carl Jung, who a lot of depth psychology is rooted in Jungian psychology and Jungian principles, talks a lot about the differentiation process, and that the first half of our life, we're really sort of oriented towards more safety and towards more structure. And, there's a path that you need to follow, and this will keep you safe. You go to school, you get a job, you get married, and then you retire. And if you just follow this path, then things will be good, right? But what Jung sort of brought to the surface is that around midlife, right? So right around like 35, we start to do a little differentiation work. And that becomes like, okay, this is what I have held to be true up to this point. What else could be true? And we start to go on this process of like the hero's journey inward a little bit and start to identify like, what are my truths versus what are the truths that I've, been taught from my family of origin, my community. What do I want to be the life that feels most fulfilling to me? And so, what's exciting about this idea of living our lives based on like what our soul's path is. I believe that all of us come here with certain things that we were meant to experience in this lifetime, like so our soul's destiny. And a lot of times, the one place we're not talking about that is in our relationships and in our love lives. And I believe that our relationships can be the most profound mirror to show us ourselves, to show us where we're afraid, and show ourselves like where we really sort of hold back from living out loud. I think relationships can be an incredibly convenient place to hide out from doing some of the deeper layers of self-discovery and exploration. But what I believe we are evolving as a human species into the space of doing is really using our relationships as a container to explore a little bit of these deeper layers of self, capital S self, as I like to say it. And that's like the soul self, right? So when we talk about sovereignty in relationships, it becomes more of an interdependent model where I love to say, the safety does not come from this other human because, humans are going to human. That's the one thing we can sort of count on the human in our relationships. Our human will be afraid, whatever human that we are, the human that we're standing next to. And so if we sort of say, like, what are these activations that are coming to the surface for both of us, attempting to demonstrate to us, to one another, and to ourselves, then it becomes a little bit less of like what the attachment-based models are rooted in, which like, you will save me from my big existential fears. You will save me from my alone. You will save me from ever feeling like I'm not enough, which no human is ever going to be able to do for us. But rather, I can't fix it, but I can go through this with you. And I can stand here by your side and really say, I'm curious about you. I want to understand you. I want to learn about you. I want to be present with you in the journey side by side. And it becomes a little bit more of like a co-creation of this life versus like we're afraid of life, but we're hiding out in a bunker together so we don't have to feel all those big uncomfortable feelings,
I love that. I'm going to bring John and Teddy up in a moment, but I'd love to have you reflect. So many of our alumni are super happy single midlifers.
Love that.
May have moved through a relationship and maybe they'll meet someone, maybe they won't, but really embracing this idea of self-sovereignty in midlife. And so I'd love to hear you comment about that, or those who are in that state, what they would learn coming to a week with you.
Well, you're speaking my language, Kari, because, I am someone who was married for 12 years to an incredibly wonderful man, still one of my best friends on the planet. And as we came into this space of midlife that we're talking about, what we both realized was this relationship has changed, right? And we allowed it to evolve and change form into a friendship. And what I believe we are starting to say, and this is something that like I've heard spiritual teachers speak about over the years, but I really feel like we are like rooting down into an embodied space of this collectively, is what if we made the choice to shift into holding relationships as something we move into when it's justified, meaning sort of shifting away from this baseline of like, partnership should be the baseline and there's something wrong with you if you're single. Like, how often do we hear people say things like, so-and-so is so great, why are they still single, right? And that somehow means I am incomplete until I am partnered, versus holding as the truth, like, I'm in no way incomplete. I think more than ever, we have all of these ways to live rich, bold, fulfilling lives. We can go places like MEA and really dive into the space of community and aliveness and amazing food and all the things. And I don't need a partner to do that, but I can have community around me to do that, right? And then when it's justified, if it's justified at some point, then I join in a partnership with another person, but not because I'm in any way, shape, or form incomplete in my sovereignty. Yeah. Oh, I think you're muted, Kari. Get it.
There we go. I'm seeing so many of y'all doing this. This is a secret MEA code, which means polishing the pearls of wisdom. Preach, girl. Yes, everybody. Susan said she went to your week last year and it was amazing. Awesome. All right. I'm going to bring up John for a moment and then I'm going to bring everybody back up here together. Super excited. Thank you, Dené. So John, picking up on this, I'd love to hear you share a little bit of your reflections in all the different types of conversations you've been having with Mr. Feelgood, what brought you to that, and some of your thoughts around these topics around relationships of all kinds.
Well, firstly, hats off to Dené. That was just wonderful. I'm so engaged already and excited and kind of, spirited by what you had to share with us. And it's a fantastic subject and something that we're, none of us are not going to consider at some time. So I'm really excited to learn more and get to know you more. Wow, where to begin without going on like an old tome. I was brought up without a dad and with two older sisters and a mum. So my education was pretty well balanced and with the women in my life and also the men in my life, men that I became friends with later on. I've always been fascinated with psychology. I've always been fascinated with the teachings of Carl Jung and various others. And I've traveled the world for the last 40 years and worked with some of the most incredible people in the business, in the advertising, in the literature, in the fashion business, etc., etc. Mr. Feelgood was a sort of, it came at the right time about 4 years ago, just as I realized I couldn't travel anymore and I needed something to engage with. What's always been vital to me, sometimes, you know, as a young man coming from Yorkshire, people could easily mock you for this, but it's always been absolutely vital for me to connect with a human being in conversation. Yes, we can have superficial fun and games and have a massive giggle and all the rest of it, but at the heart of it, really, there's no denying this instinct that I've always had, and I think it's in all of us, by the way, but just to want to connect with someone, to want to listen to someone, to want to learn from someone, and to want to, you know, hopefully help and support someone. So Mr. Feelgood was a project that my co-founder, Pete Sampson, a 20-year veteran of Fleet Street in London, a proper reporter, came to me, and he liked writings that I'd done on Instagram. He knew me, our wives knew each other. And he came to me at a stage in his life, and he's 10 years plus younger than me, where he wanted to stop drinking. He wanted to focus on different writings, on different avenues for him to express as a journalist. And he liked me, and he liked what I did. And so I was actually in the middle of another big project, a television project, and I sat with him for lunch. And there was something about the honesty of the way he presented this, you know, 3 or 4 sentences to try and see if I'd be interested in helping in any way or developing in any way. But it was in that just beautiful nakedness of just looking at me in a public place. So we were dressed, but just speaking, you know, directly from his soul. And that touched me, and that sort of made me think, oh no, I'm going to get involved with this, you know, but at the same time, I wanted to, because it was sort of ticking all the boxes that matter to me. And what matters to me, so we developed it for a few months, and then we went live. And really what it's about is a safe space. It's like a campfire chat. I mean, it's like this. I don't care what your background, you know, socioeconomic background, your religious background, which God you worship, the color of your skin, who you choose to love. I just want to sit with you, and I want to talk to you, and I want to compare our experiences and hold that, you know, hopefully be able to give insight, but, you know, not rush for insight. There's no great fix. It's really about having conversations. And Mr. Feelgood is specifically aimed at men, although 55% of our readers are women. But it's really about just, you know, I feel so blessed to have spoken. I don't know how many, I've done 86 issues, I think. But I've had conversations with a broad range of brilliant men from all different backgrounds. I mean, some famous, some not. I don't really care about that at all. I just care about the connection of what can I learn from you, or what can I help you with? How can this help us as fathers, as sons, as brothers, you know, as contemporary humans? So what Mr. Feelgood is just an expression, an extension of who I am. It's a way to include people, salute people, respect people, listen to people, debate with people, and hopefully just all done with a spirit of compassion, respect, and an excitement in where you're going to go. What am I going to learn? Where's this going to go? You know, that's pretty exciting, to live presently and to have access to all these different minds. Does that answer? I'll give you
beautiful. Beautiful. And how wonderful. This magazine was really meant to help support men.
Yeah.
To talk about emotions. We've certainly seen so many studies of the loneliness epidemic around the world that increases as we get older. Women often spent more time developing social relationships than men did. So there's a bigger chasm to cross. So what are some of the things you've learned about how men, or women and men together, can build these kind of connections as we get older?
Oh, definitely communication. Definitely with men, it's about, you know, women are, to some extent, you know, have the lead on us, of course, in many ways, but definitely in their ability to share and to reach out to their girlfriends. You know, I mean, I've got friends that I've had since I was 4 or 5 years old who lead completely different lives to me, but I'm really, you know, they're massively of vital importance to me. So I think men should just communicate more. You know, I encourage my friends to pick up the phone, not to write a text, not to send an email, not to beat around the bush, but just to say, you know what, I'm struggling now. I'm struggling. I need your help, you know. And I think that's just, I think men are getting, I mean, I'm really fortunate to have such a broad circle of brilliant men in my life, but I think men are getting better at that. It's not as, it's gradual. It's gradual, but they are getting better because there's lots of men out there who want to have this conversation because it's a necessary conversation. There's also a lot of women who write to me, and mothers and you know, and sisters and who really need advice. I think young men these days, you know, there's not the mentorship that there used to be in our culture. And I think mentoring is so important and so vital. I think mentoring, you know, it's about consistency as well. It's about long term. It's not about a flash in the pan, I'm distracted, let's go. It's about really investing your time. And once you do that, I find in my experience, the joy that you experience and the fulfillment of seeing somebody else come through a problem is just, it's you know, it's as good as it gets. And as far as men and women, it's all about communication, isn't it? It's all about creating space and time to really listen to each other and really speak to each other, and to be willing to set aside our habitual, you know, compromises, or the I think Dené will speak better to this than I, but those, you know, those things that we hide about with distraction. I think that's a really interesting topic to really look at and to be brave about, and to be, you know, feel, I mean, this is why I'm excited about what we're doing, because we're going to sit in a place of safety, in a beautiful place. And it's not about judgment. It's about acceptance. It's about love. It's about compassion. It's about being in a circle of people who want to be heard and they want advice. And you know, I think none of us, all of us need that. It's an ever-ending life school, you know, as far as I can see.
100%. Such a good segue to bring you in, Teddi. We're going to open it up to questions in a couple minutes. But Teddi, maybe you can share a little bit about how you've seen the value of what John and Dené were sharing, of having this space to have these types of conversations in these environments that we create at MEA to get past those surface level discussions.
Yeah. What I have observed, being the one person on the MEA team that has been in pretty much every cohort, there is an exercise that we do right at the beginning of the week, and it's an opportunity for us to be vulnerable right off the bat. And I'm not going to give away too much here about what we do, but I am so surprised how fast men too here are willing to jump into the deep end. You know, we are all waiting for that opportunity to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to be heard in a safe container, and to be able to say those things that we've kind of pulled back from in our normal day-to-day life. We're like, we have this voice inside that really wants to share and be vulnerable, and it could be maybe be in the workplace, or it could be with a group of friends, and your ego jumps in and makes you pull back and kind of tells you, well, don't really say that right now, you know. And I see how hungry people are for this, and what it really tells me is this longing for connection, and to share in that, and to experience our own story outside of our own story, right? Because we're starting to hear it from everybody else. And inevitably in these groups during a workshop, you know, you'll share your own story, but then you're also hearing from somebody else who's going through something that you might have gone through 10 years ago. And it's in that sharing of what it's like to be a human being. I always feel like we really don't do that much. We just hold a really wonderful container for everybody to just let this happen. it's a really, really special experience. And does that help there? Is that kind of, yeah?
That's beautiful. So I'm gonna pose a little scenario for you, Dené,
Okay.
that'll intertwine our weeks together. It'll be super fun. So we've got the therapist in the house. John and I and Teddi are going to teach our week together on this topic, broadly, really about transitions. And I think so much about the work you're doing today as a therapist, or managing various transitions in our life through the lens of relationships. It's one of our core pillars at MEA, navigating transitions. We have an online course because we're always in them. We often have a dozen happening at the same time. And we may be in a different place than our friends or our colleagues or our partners. So let me just throw this one at you, Dené. So here we are. Teddi is self-sovereign single over there rocking it. John has been married for, is it 30 years now, John?
Almost, yeah.
Almost 30 years, still in deep love with his beautiful wife and his children. I've been divorced and remarried. I'm in the I'm 17 but 57 in a new love. Love to hear your thoughts about all those dimensions around transitions in adult life, in relationships. What have you noticed? What could you share for others who are listening who are in one of these camps, or maybe a different camp?
Ooh, I think what is so beautiful about what is the thread that connects all of us is transitions feel scary because they are the space of the unknown, right? And so much of what we are attempting to do in the structures of our society, or the 5-year plans that we make that, in the last couple of years we have learned certainly can go awry, is create some sort of defense against sitting in the discomfort of the unknown, right? But what I love about what Teddi was saying is that there is something about coming together in community and holding space for here's the truth of what I'm afraid of, right? And the minute we do that, I find something alchemical happens. It's why I love sitting in circles like these to the extent that I wanted to make it my life's work, because there's a magic alchemy of oh, you too? I thought it was just me, right? And all of a sudden, there's a remembrance of how to do this. And exactly like Teddi said, we all intuitively know how to come back into truth with one another. It's just we just need a permission slip or the space to do it. And all of a sudden we remember how much more alike we are than we are different. And all of these different variables and all of these different factors of life kind of become irrelevant. And we just remember our shared humanity, and that, yes, transitions are scary and aging can be scary because we don't know what happens on the other side of being in these bodies. We can have an idea, but holding space for one another in that uncertainty, I find becomes really anchoring and just a really healing experience for all of us, no matter what.
Yeah. John, what are some of your reflections on that from all the folks you've spoken with and the community you've been building through Mr. Feelgood?
Well, my reflections on what? On the different kinds of people coming to the circle. I just think it's, I mean, every chap I've spoken to, literally every chap, and, I have to deal with a lot of famous people with their teams around there, their protection layers. And I do a lot of the interviews, I choose to do them at my home and for various reasons. But, and and a lot of people I contact through just reaching out to them through my network. But if they trust you, and if they're in my home, and if I explain to them exactly what we're doing here, and it's not about click-based, sensationalism, it's about having a proper conversation. And 99.99% within the first 3-4 minutes, we're having a fantastic conversation, and it's a really heartfelt, candid. Literally, I can only think of one person where it didn't work, where it was awkward out of all the chaps I've spoken to. People want to talk. People don't want to be. We're social beings. We want to connect. We all want to connect. We like being together. We like sharing. We like learning from one another. So I just have these amazing conversations with men, and I come away with something, not just for the magazine, and they come away with something. And then, I've got my 26-year-old nephew in London who edits the videos for me, and he's sort of like, oh, this is amazing, I'm learning so much from him, and I didn't think I'd learn from him. But it's just a way of it's just connection and communication. It's about feeling safe to express all those little shadow thoughts, all those little, noises and words and things sometimes that can fill us with shame. But once you express it, you sort of exercise it, and you know that other people feel that way, and everyone wants to feel heard, and everyone wants to feel a part of something. So, it keeps me going.
Y'all getting that vibe here? This is very MEA. I know Teddy wants to jump in. Before you jump in, this is now your time to have a comment, ask a question, share a reflection, but raise your hand by clicking the reactions button. And then you see at the bottom, it has the raise your hand. So let's get a few of you up here. Anything you want to share is great for all of us. And Teddy, go ahead, jump in.
I just wanted to mention that, John was on Rich Roll's podcast, and I had already been familiar with his work and his work with Mr. Feelgood. And after I saw the podcast, I just was like, what a wonderful, wisdom-filled human being, male. I was excited, and I went after him to try to see if he would want to jump into this world of MEA. DM'd him, and he got back to me within 10 minutes. And it's been nothing but, I followed my intuition, right? I was like, this is a good person that has a lot to say about this. And comes from such a unique world of being this kind of the first ever male supermodel, but yet he's married to the same woman for 30 years. And I do want to share this right now, because part of our workshop is this topic of love. And John called me the other day, and he shared something, and I hope this is okay to share, John, that he and his wife had...
I guess it is, Teddy. We'll find out. I'll call my lawyers afterwards. Let's see.
It was
Trust yourself.
That he and his wife had a talk the night before, a little like, let's come together and just see how much do we want to put ourselves out there this year? What are our boundaries this year? What are we looking for together, independently and together? And I was just so moved by that, and the fact that you would share that with me, and this idea of what really love is, these invisible forces. How do you even describe what real love is? And it really is experiential, and what John described to me was so beautiful. And it's about this type of how you come into this, even when it's been 3 decades, and the richness in the depth of their connection really came through in what he shared to me. I really appreciated that. And we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff, during the week of the Love, Sex, and Death workshop. And I believe Dené is going to be talking about it a lot with the relationship workshop.
Well, let's bring up some of you guys. So I'm going to bring Chrissy on up here. Hello, Chrissy. And then y'all keep raising your hands. Let's get a few more up here before we run out of time. Hi, Chrissy.
I am curious to hear more about what Dené was saying at the beginning, and I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but something along the lines of feeling safe in your relationship, and how that might, I'm not sure if I understand correctly, hold you back from fully experiencing life. I'm divorced now, but I want to know what to be aware of if I enter a relationship again in the future, and how that might hamper or contribute to grabbing life by the horns.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chrissy. I think those of us who have been in some long-term relationships can relate to the idea that, like, relationships, I often say, can conceivably be a really convenient place to hide out from taking some of our deeper layers of personal responsibility. And what that a lot of times looks like, I find, is you are not meeting my needs. You are the problem in my life. You are the place that I am focused on, like nitpicking all of the things that if you could just do them differently, then I would have peace. Then I would be able to like really exhale into this life, right? And there's something that my mentor, Esther Perel, taught me that's like the first thing I always say to couples when they come and sit down, which is like everyone who comes in for couples work sort of thinks of it as like a drop-off center. Like, here is my spouse, fix them. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with them so you can fix it, right? And the only way couples therapy is ever effective, and you guys can take this to the bank because it's a fact, is if each person is willing to take 100% responsibility for what they are bringing to the dynamic and what they can change, right? As long as I need someone else to change in order for me to feel okay, that's always an outsourcing of my power. That's always outside of my control. And like, whether they do that or not, I have no control over. So if I change, inevitably, because we are connected, because we are energetic beings, that person will change. Like, our paradigm will change, it'll shift, it'll either evolve or, it'll change form as it needs to. But I believe if we, as we go into the space of dating, or if we're in a relationship right now, or whatever it looks like to attempt to relate to another person, if we look at our points of activation as, what is this like arousing within me, right? Like, what's being evoked when this person doesn't text me back and it's been 3 hours and I'm like, where are they? They don't like me. All of the mind chatter starts to go a little bit haywire. Oof. What's the story I'm telling myself about what that means about me? What feels historic about that? Where have I felt this in the past, right? Like, I really start to be in that inner inquiry. Then this relationship dynamic becomes an opportunity for me to come into deeper layers of my own healing versus like outsourcing. You need to text me. And if you don't text me within 5 minutes of when I text you, we're going to have a problem, or whatever the thing is that we might say. Now, it's not that I don't communicate to that person, like, I got to be honest, there's a lot that comes up for me when it's been a full day and I've texted you and you don't text me back. But what I realized is, and that's where we sort of like share that inner inquiry with them, it really reminds me of something that I experienced from a parent or whatever. And so I have this longing in relationships to be met in a certain way. Would you be open to that? Is that something you're willing to participate in, versus that space of like, comply, correct, all of these things that we can kind of get into the patterns of in our relationships, which inevitably that person will just meet with resistance, because subconsciously none of us want to be controlled. It's just one of those things,
Mhm.
I'd love to dovetail on that. I wrote a book with my partner Stephen called Becoming Beloveds, where we mapped Maslow's hierarchy of needs to relationships. And it becomes a really mature way to either reflect on a past relationship or to use as a rubric going into a new one. So the idea of safety, maybe it is something that holds you back, but this idea of like, for an individual, what makes you feel safe? Oh, Leslie's showing the book. Let me show. What is it that is related to perceived safety? Like, some people have a low threshold where they don't feel safe for whatever those reasons were. Maybe driving recklessly in the car. You ever been with a partner who drives more recklessly and you feel scared? You just slow down, Chad. Backseat driver, maybe tied to safety, or maybe it's that sense, I need you to respond to me because my safety mechanism starts exploding and I'm getting anxious. And for the other partner to have that conversation, like, these are the thresholds of where I perceive to be safe or unsafe. And then that can give you more freedom to understand one another. And then you keep going up the hierarchy of what is it that brings self-esteem to myself, to my partner? What are the things that create love and belonging that maybe were a source of wounding in the past, that I can take ownership for, that I can understand, and that I can reimagine in future relationships? So thank you so much for that question, Chrissy. Anybody else want to raise your hand and ask a question? Let's see. Oh, who came in and just left? Anybody have a question? While we're waiting, let's shift and chat a little bit about death. That's a big one. Relationships leave our life. Love to hear your reflections, John. It's been a part of your life for a long time, and what your reflections might be about that as we come to spend a week with you.
Yeah, it's a subject I've had around me since being a little boy. I lost my father when I was 11. My sisters and I lost our father when I was 11. And I wasn't really in the environment to have good supports. So it's been a big thing of my life, death, and I've obviously experienced a lot of it like many of us. But I think it's something that we really need to look at and talk about and speak of and share and not be afraid of. I think it's not a heavy subject. I think it's a natural, the natural cycle of life. And I think we should not hide it away. Many cultures, apart from our Western cultures, really revere it and speak of it and take away the fear. And I think anything that we can do to take away fear and to embolden ourselves and educate ourselves and to give ourselves compassion and help is positive. So yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into that one for sure.
Teddy, and you want to jump in?
Yeah, it's been a rich topic in my own practice. Reading a lot of the work of a Canadian named Stephen Jenkinson. There's a documentary done on him called Grief Walker. I highly recommend it. But as somebody who's worked in the palliative care industry for years and years in Canada and kind of just saw how backwards it really was. And since then, he's kind of carved his own path of allowing to reposition these sort of redefine what we think about when we speak about death. And thinks that it really, should be talked about when you go in for your first physical, talked about early in life. He said even, talking about how we finally got sex education introduced in the school system. He goes, try to get death education introduced in the school system. It's extremely difficult to get anybody to talk about it. And we usually wait till we get that diagnosis, or a friend or a family member gets that diagnosis to start to contemplate this. And it's kind of a crash course. So what I'm hoping with our week is that we do touch on this very juicy topic of death in a very healthy, safe environment where we can discuss, certain, some of Stephen Jenkinson's work, but others' work around this subject to help us start to build a healthy relationship about the inevitable, really, the inevitable that, we are going to have to deal with this at some point.
And it's really, just to jump in, I mean, for me, it's all, I've been to lots of funerals in my life, including my sister's who died prematurely in 2022 November, actually, the day funnily enough, the day I didn't know at the time that I did the interview with Rich Roll. And I mean, I've always seen death as for me personally, it really has always been a reminder to live. It's always been a reminder that we are finite and we only have, so many seconds, minutes, days, months, years on this life. So to strive with all our might and all our passion and all our ability to really make the most of it and impact, to be who we want to be, to achieve what we want to achieve, but also to be, I think, the more authentic we are, the better the benefit for all those around us. So I see it as a really quite a healthy sell-by date to get things done. I think it's a positive force. It can be seen as a positive force. And I also feel that, it shouldn't be something that we hide away. It should be something that's spoken about with respect and considered. And I, there's a whole other subject about, I've got a 90-year-old mother and my wife has two 90-year-old parents. So we're in that chapter of life. And there's so much science and information about the benefits of actually having older people work with younger people to put them together. Sir Ken Robinson, the late Sir Ken Robinson, did a lot of research into this where, kids are learning about history, they're learning about local culture, they're learning about getting old, and older people are revitalized and have purpose and are able to be heard. And it's not just, put them on drugs and hide them away and let them go. I really believe they should be utilized and used as much as possible. My mum ran an old people's home for 15 years, and I was living in New York, but I go back to Yorkshire, and I'd always go and see these people, and I had all my little people from different, that lived there. And of course they passed away depending on the interval of when I'd last been there. But it was so enriching to be around these people, and a lot of them are really rascally and full of fun, and it was an absolute blessing. My father used to take me to Meals on Wheels when I was 4 years old to 11 years old, and going around and seeing these people in facilities and having time with them as a little boy. And many of them were from the First World War as well as the Second World War, and having that first-hand knowledge with these elders just had a profound effect on me, which I carry to this day. So I think death is a subject that I mean, the English, we have a dark sense of humor at times, and there's plenty of places for that. But I think it's a subject that really needs to be discussed more, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. It should be used as an accelerator to do what we need to do in this life.
It's really freeing. We only have 4 minutes left, but we have to talk about sex, people. So, Dené, midlife and sex is a whole thing. There's a lot going on. Bodies are changing, may have had long-term relationships, new relationships. So what have you noticed, any themes that you may have seen in your work around midlife and beyond and sex?
Yeah. We're just like,
we got like 4 minutes. We gotta go there.
Yeah, I think obviously I can only speak to my experience as a woman in midlife and sex. But what I will say that I see so often with my clients is that sex really changes and our libido really changes for women. We sort of get into this like post-ovulatory phase where like sex becomes like we're not in the phase of having babies anymore. So our sex really becomes about pleasure and about transcendence and about how to like really be in relationship with ourselves and in our bodies in a different way than maybe some of the like performative sex that we as women certainly are conditioned culturally to do when we're younger. And I think it can be such an exciting time in relationships, but there's a lot of I kind of like it's funny as we were talking about death. I think there is something as we get into this later phase of life. I love to say, when nothing is promised, then everything is sacred. And I think as we get to this place where we're starting to lose loved ones and lose parents, and we're like in like the visceral felt sense that like this is fleeting, that we aren't going to be in these bodies forever. It's like we really want to like live all the eros and the raja and the aliveness and like be in our bodies in this really present way. And so I think, I love to talk about how we can hold space for like just the curiosity and the exploration and like, what does it look like to bring aliveness and fun and play into like, we can't do it wrong. And like, there's no like right way to do this. There's no like I love like the role playing, but like going places and pretending we're different people, and all of these ways that we can make sex something that is outside of the box of like once a week you check a box and this is what it looks like. And I really love to like play with couples around like, how can we explore mixing it up, and that there's no right or wrong answer with what that looks like,
Yeah. It's all about managing, the realities of this new stage of life. We've been given this extra 30 years of active life. We love to speak about this at MEA, and it's not 30 years to tack on to childhood. It's not 30 years to tack on to that last years of frailty. It's the middle of the life. And can we open up our curiosity? Can we open up possibility? And how can we do that in community? And that's what we are all about. And I'm just so grateful that our guest faculty give us this time to be here with us for free for an hour to answer your questions, to give you a sense of who's there. So if you're feeling drawn to coming to the warmth and the beauty of Baja, you can join Dené March 4th to 9th. You can join John and Teddi and I April 15th. And if there's any other week that's appealing to you, of course, this is just that kind of gentle reminder that this is a unique and really special place. And if it's calling to you or it's calling to someone we're here. And for all of you alumni, I love seeing your faces here. It just makes me so happy to see this community back together, recognizing one another, feeling that authentic connection that's been built online, in person. It's so intensely valuable. I hope the juice and the pop that you get from these calls carries forward into the rest of your day. So with that, I'm going to have Leslie give us some music. I'm going to get us all off of the spotlight so we can have our final dance party to get us out of here. And thank you all so much. There we go. Let me get right. There we go. Now we're into the gallery view, everybody. Throw it in there. And our last cool vibes dance party. Love it. Thank you so much for coming. Go Joe. Hey David, good to see you. Thank you everybody. Aparna, thank you for coming. Beauty, great to see you. Caitlin, thank you for coming. Thank you everybody. Daniel, great to see you. Nicole, great to see everybody. Thank you again. Take care. Thank you, Dené. Thank you, John. Thank you, Teddi.